Ready? We're going to get this webinar started here this afternoon. Welcome to our Anywhere Polling and Self-Paced Polling webinar. If you've been in the new user and additional topic sessions, welcome back. If you have not participated in the other two, welcome to this one. We're going to try to stick to our 60-minute timeline today. Realistically, I think we'll probably finish up a few minutes early, so we'll have some time for questions. So what we'll do, I'll introduce myself really quick here. My name is Derek Abram. Again, for those of you that have been on the previous webinars over the last week and a half or so, thank you for coming back and listening to me for another 60 minutes. I've been with Turning Technologies Canada for about 5 years now, so I've been there, done that, seen it all. I am a fantastic resource for all of you moving forward. So again, like I've said in previous sessions, if you require any sort of additional training, whether it's one-on-one training for your organization or department specifically, absolutely, please feel free to reach out to me at any point to set that sort of thing up. Just a couple really quick housekeeping things. I will be on the call at the end to answer any questions that come in. You will see a little floating control panel probably off to the right-hand side of your screen that has a chat section as well as a QA section. So as we go along, please feel free, just kind of submit questions through those two options, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go. And if we have some time at the end, if I don't get through all the questions during, I'll take some time to answer them at that point. So our agenda for this session, we are going to be looking at Anywhere Polling. And we're going to be looking at how to poll verbal questions and how to poll with a question list and how to create that question list. And then we're going to move over and have a look at self-paced polling, and we're going to look at how to set that up, how to run a self-paced test, and then how to save the data once you're done. So today's session, in comparison to some of the other ones, there's not as many little bullet points on the agenda, which is always a nice thing to see. So let's start out with looking at Anywhere Polling from a verbal polling perspective. And so right now, I have my PowerPoint presentation open, and you'll notice that I am not running Turning Point within PowerPoint. That's how I'm able to have my dashboard open. That's how I'm able to open up Anywhere Polling and all these other things, because I'm just running PowerPoint. Now, what we're about to look at with Anywhere Polling, really what this is going to allow you to do is start to poll questions outside of PowerPoint. So for those of you that may use Prezi, if you use Keynote on a Mac, if you like to show videos on YouTube in your presentations or media content like that, Anywhere Polling is a great way to be able to ask those important questions, to gauge understanding and things like that, without having to be locked into that PowerPoint environment specifically. So let's have a look at how this would look if we were just polling verbal questions. Essentially, all you need to do is when you want to do some Anywhere Polling with verbal questions, on your Turning Point dashboard, you're simply going to click your Anywhere Polling panel. This little box that pops up right here is your Anywhere Polling application. That's all it is. It's just a little floating kind of toolbar that sits there. And so the idea here is that when we're asking verbal questions, we're going to be saying to the audience, okay, what color is the sky today? Push 1 if you say it's blue, push 2 if you think it's gray, push 3 if you think it's orange, right? And so that's kind of the default way that the sort of verbal question idea works. Now, the other way we can also do it is you can actually create your question and answer content within your actual presentation. So if you're using something like Prezi, for example, obviously we don't have a direct integration with the Prezi application. So what you could actually do is within that Prezi presentation, you could create a section that has a question, just like this, where's our office located, with your answer choices. And when you come to this in your presentation, we can just simply pull this question through Anywhere Polling right over top of that Prezi slide. And so to give you an idea on how this would work, let me show you here in presentation mode. So I'm just going to launch my presentation. And so what's going to happen is when we come to this question during the actual live presentation, all I have to do in verbal mode is on the Anywhere floating window here, I've got my little drop-down button. I simply have to tell Anywhere Polling that I'm going to be polling a question with 5 answer choices. From here, my audience members simply press the corresponding button on their keypad to respond. Just like we saw within PowerPoint polling over the last few sessions, you're able to see at any point how many participants have answered your question. We can also, with Anywhere Polling, do things like trigger countdown timers. So just like in PowerPoint, you can restrict the amount of time your participants have to answer the question. Once you're done and you hit the stop button, a chart's going to appear over top of your presentation. Now you can move that chart around and you can resize it. And essentially what's going to happen is whatever you resize your chart window to and whatever spot you place it on your screen, that's where it's going to appear every time you close an Anywhere poll during your presentation. So what I generally recommend doing is if you're going to be using Anywhere Polling, set up your question area similar to what I've done here with your question, your answer choices, then leave a spot that you can kind of have the chart float so that it doesn't cover up content and it's very easy to kind of see everything that was happening on the screen all at once. Once you're done looking at the results, you simply close your chart window and you can advance through your presentation and carry on just as you were. Now, one of the things that you will notice in your window here, let me just show that here, is that there's a bunch of different question types. So just like we've seen over the last few sessions within PowerPoint-based polling, you do have the ability to create short answer questions with Anywhere, numeric response, essay, demographic assignment, and team competition. So for the most part, the same functionality that we see within PowerPoint polling is available through our Anywhere Polling option. There's a few restrictions like comparative links and things like that, but other than that, pretty much the functionality is all the same right here. Okay, so one of the questions here, not sure when I'd use this over PowerPoint polling. So that's actually a really great point. I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, in this example here right now, I've got PowerPoint running because I'm not a Prezi user, and I don't have another application that presents on my computer. So I'm just kind of using PowerPoint as an example right now. But you're not necessarily having to use it over top of PowerPoint, right? Think of things like Prezi. Think, in class you want to show a YouTube video about something, and then you want to ask the class a series of questions about what just happened in that video. An example I can think of right off the top of my head, you've got a bunch of medical students in class, and you show a video on like a hand washing tutorial, right? With Anywhere Polling, you can now ask questions over top of that video as the video is going so that you can say, did the person in the video wash their hands correctly? Did they perform this particular step correctly? So that, again, you're not locked into that sort of PowerPoint sort of linear, presentation mode. It really lets you kind of break outside of that. Another popular area that we see this used in is if you ever present material out of an LMS system, or if you ever are given like a web-based system of some sort and said, okay, here's all the material within this web portal, it's up to you to go present it, go help people make sense of all this. With that content being online, obviously you can't just take Turning Point and plug questions into it, right? And so Anywhere Polling is a great application to be able to present that web-based content that you can't otherwise create polling slides in, you can just ask questions right over top of it to make sure people are understanding what you're talking about. And yes, it does keep track of responses. So just like within PowerPoint polling, all the same results reports are available via Anywhere polling as well. So you can still look at results by question, results by participant, the comparative report that's available in the back end of the reporting and Turning Point, where you can compare two questions. All that's available as well. So the same reporting process and the same reporting capabilities we saw in the previous sessions with PowerPoint polling is still exactly the same and is still applicable to Anywhere. Okay, so that process has been made a lot more sort of, I guess, combined together. In the past, when we had 3 separate versions of our software, the reporting was different, saving was different, report options were different. But now with the latest version of Turning Point 5, the reporting and everything, it's all done in the exact same spot in the exact same way. So, from a user experience perspective, it's a lot easier to work with. Okay, now to save your session data in an Anywhere polling session, what you would do is this little gear icon right here, you're just going to click it and go to Session and click Save Session. Okay. One of the questions that I did see quickly was differences between Mac and PC. The great news is when it comes to Anywhere polling, it is absolutely identical between Mac and PC. Same options, same capabilities. It's not like with the PowerPoint polling where the Mac side doesn't have all the functionality. With Anywhere polling, they are both absolutely 100% the same. Okay, so everything we're looking at here today, if you're a Mac user, it'll be exactly the same for you. Okay. So that's the idea on how you're going to work with verbal questions. So asking the audience a question or having your question, built into Prezi or built into a Keynote slide or something like that. The other way that you can use Turning Point is or Anywhere polling is you can also create what's called a question list. And the big difference here is when we're doing verbal polling, the results stay very, very generic. So when you go and look at a report from a verbal polling session, it literally shows you question 1, answer A, answer B, answer C. And what Anywhere polling does is it grabs a screenshot of what was on your display at the time. So you can look at your, here's the results of the question, here's what was on the screen. So it's not really so much about capturing what the question and answer was, it's more here's what you were asking them to answer based on, here's what the result was. And so if you want those more detailed reports, if you want to be able to go back and look and see, okay, question number 1 was this question specifically, these were the answer choices, things like that, what you're going to want to do is create what's called a question list. And we're just going to run through that process here right now. And I just see, just before I jump into that, can you record the right answer with the question? Yes, you can. There's 2 options for doing it. If you're doing a verbal poll, what you would do is when the chart appears on the window, you can right-click on what the correct answer bar is and set it as correct so that Turning Point knows from a scoring perspective, okay, this is what the correct answer was. Because you were verbally asking it, there's no way to set that up ahead of time. Now, what we're going to look at here is creating a question list. So if you have that preset list of questions with answers that you're going to use in Anywhere polling and you would like to set correct answers and things like that, we're going to look at how exactly to do that here right now. So when it comes to creating a question list, we're going to do that through our Content tab here. So it's a spot that we haven't had a look at yet in any of the previous webinars. So this is our first look here at the Content tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell Turning Point that we want to create new content and that we want to create a question list. Okay. What Turning Point's going to do is it's going to say, okay, what do you want to call this question list? And so just like with anything else, just like your session files, just like your participant lists, I recommend giving your question list a name that when it comes time to use it, you know what it is. So if it's for a biology course for a particular date or section, label it accordingly so that you can easily reference that later on. So let me just make a list here. I'm going to hit save. And the next step here is to start building your questions. Now you're going to see here it starts out with one question by default, and all we have to do is double click it. And then the editor here works much like the editor for your Hotmail or Gmail account or any sort of web-based message forums or anything like that. You can just simply start typing your information in. Okay, I'm just going to hit Tab to move down to my answer selections. And I'm just going to type some in here. Okay, just like in PowerPoint polling, you have the ability to create up to 10 answer choices for multiple choice. And you'll see here on the right-hand side, there is a settings panel that looks exactly like the settings panel that we saw when we were working within PowerPoint. So again, going back to, we've tried to keep everything as consistent as possible throughout all three polling environments. Same thing here. So just like we saw in PowerPoint polling, you've got access to all the same sort of stuff. So we can make this question multiple response if we want people to be able to choose more than one thing. We can tell Anywhere Polling here in this question list that option C is correct. So I have all those same options that I have within PowerPoint polling right here in my question list for Anywhere Polling. I'm just going to go back. When I want to add another question, I'm just simply going to hit my question menu and add a new one doing the exact same thing. Now, we saw earlier on that quick poll menu that you can also create short answer style questions. So in your question list, if you wanted to create a short answer question, we can change it right here in this drop down. So if I wanted to do a short answer, I can change my drop down. I can come into my question. Okay. Just like in PowerPoint, I can set a correct answer here. Okay. And I'm just going to hit save and close to close that. Now, what we're going to see happen here is on our Turning Point dashboard, in our content section here in the bottom left, that now becomes a usable piece of content within Turning Point. The great thing with a content or question list is that the same list can be used within PowerPoint polling, Anywhere Polling, or self-paced polling. So one list of questions, all three polling environments are available to you. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick our August 28th webinar here in our content panel, and we're going to choose our Anywhere Polling option. Now you're going to notice here that it looks the same with one additional piece of information. I have this little drop-down menu, and it shows the questions that I've pre-built in my question list. So now Turning Point knows exactly what my questions are, exactly what the correct answers are, and how many answer choices there are. So I no longer need to click my little quick poll button and say, oh, there's 5 answer choices here. All I have to do is hit play. And Turning Point automatically knows now how to restrict the answer choices, what to restrict them to, and what they are. Okay. The thing you'll notice is that now instead of just saying answer A, B, C, D under my chart now shows my actual answer choices. So now it's another spot where it's easier to start tying all this information together. Okay, let's just see. If this is a test that has 4 sections, I'm being given 30 minutes. That's a tricky question about the sections. The easiest thing to do, I think what we might see as far as testing goes, when we move on to the self-paced section in just a second, that might be a slightly better fit. You can do testing in Anywhere Polling and PowerPoint polling. The challenge is that everybody kind of has to do everything together, right? So, everybody has to answer this question at the same time, then everybody has to move on to the next question together at the same time. There's no, do it at your own speed. And that's exactly what self-paced testing allows a student to do, is do everything at their own speed. So, it's kind of a tough question to answer right now, but I'll show you self-paced polling in a few minutes, and we'll see if that maybe helps to answer that a little bit for you as well. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, let me just save my data here. Save session. Okay, and I'm just going to save that session data so that I can show you that the reporting looks just like it does within PowerPoint polling. So if I come in here, choose Anywhere, which is the session I just saved, and hit Reports, you'll see here that the reporting is absolutely identical. Same drop-down options, same printing, same export options as we saw within PowerPoint polling. Okay, so it's nice and easy. It's a familiar process. There's nothing you have to worry about doing differently. One thing that I will mention is we've seen over the last few webinars together within PowerPoint polling, there's the option on PC to do simulated polling. Within Anywhere, it does not have a simulated polling option. So if you want to play around with Anywhere polling and test it and build question lists and try them out and stuff like that, you will need to have a receiver plugged in and at least one keypad there with you. Okay, or you'll need to have access to a ResponseWare account that has at least a license in it, so that you can create a ResponseWare session ID and use your smartphone or something to test. So keep that in mind, is that you do need to have the hardware there plugged in present for Anywhere polling to function in a testing scenario. Simulated polling is not available in PowerPoint polling for Mac users, unfortunately. So if you're a Mac user, you do need to have the receiver plugged in with keypads to be able to test stuff within PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so let's. So that's kind of Anywhere polling in a nutshell. There's more stuff to it. However, if you play around with it a little bit, you'll find that it's very, very, very similar to what we saw in PowerPoint polling. So what we're going to do now is I want to jump over to self-paced polling for a little bit because it's a really cool feature of Turning Point, and it's really super easy to use. Now, one thing I do want to make you aware of is that self-paced polling only works with the NXT keypad or our new QT device. Okay, so you have to have one of those two options in order to do self-paced polling. I will let you know that there will be a ResponseWare update probably this winter that will allow for self-paced testing to work with ResponseWare as well. So that is functionality that's coming. It's just not available today. So kind of stay tuned for that. We'll send out an announcement when that feature is also available. So the idea of self-paced testing, it's kind of our third panel here on our Turning Point dashboard, is that you can create a test, whether it's a quiz, a midterm, a final exam, whatever it is. You can create that test, and each student can answer the questions at their own speed. So if I have a 2-hour window for an exam, and I finish it in 45 minutes, but let's say John needs, an hour and 15. That's not a problem. John can take that time. I can take my time. As long as we both finish in the 2-hour window, we're all good. So that's kind of the idea of self-paced polling. Now, in order to use self-paced polling, there's a couple pieces that need to fall into place. You need to create a participant list, which we covered in our last additional topic session. And you need to create a question list like we just did for Anywhere polling. So those are the two things that you need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the question list that I created earlier today for our webinar today. So here's the question list. You'll notice that there is absolutely zero detail in my questions. They all just say enter question text, enter answer text. I have put zero effort into this, as bad as that sounds. At the end of the day, with self-paced polling, the self-paced polling component really doesn't care what your questions are or what the answer choices are. All it cares about is how many questions do you have, how many answer choices are there, and what type of questions are they, and what is the correct answer. Okay? The idea with this self-paced poll is that your students are still going to have a physical printout of the questions. Okay? So they're going to be referencing a document that has all the question and answer choices. The big time saver here is that by using the NXT or QT, their exam or test is being scored immediately in real time. So there's no more, having to go through and do it yourself or run it through a Scantron machine or something like that. So all you need to do is add your questions and tell Turning Point what the correct answer is. That's it. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, well, we do an exam, and that's all fine and dandy. That's great. But we have 3 different versions of the same exam going at the same time. We've got a class of 500 students. We don't want the same exam sitting side by side. That is absolutely not a problem. With our question list, you can create multiple versions of the test. So, if we click our version drop-down menu right here and choose the option to add, we're going to add a new version. So we're going to call this version code number 1. One thing I do want to mention is that when you start creating versions of your exam, the initial list of questions you create becomes your master. Okay, and so all the versions are based off of that master that you originally built. So if you were going to have an exam of, say, 100 questions, and you wanted 3 versions, each one with the questions and answer choices scrambled up in a different order, what we're going to do here is say, okay, version code is going to be 1, and we want to add it with existing questions. You have the ability to create totally new questions if you want. Most often what we see is people doing it with existing questions. You have the ability to randomize questions, randomize answers. You can do one or the other or both together like I've got here. We're going to hit add version, and Turning Point is going to remind you that by adding this version, your original list becomes a non-testable list. It's going to be your master. Okay? So now here we go. Here's version number 1, and I've still got my master. If I want to add an additional version, I'm going to do version number 2. I want to use existing questions from my master list, and I'm going to, again, randomize the questions and the answer choices. Now, the idea behind the master version, let's say you create 3 versions of your exam, and all of a sudden you're looking at version number 1, and you realize, oh, geez, that's the wrong answer for question 4. It should be answered C instead. If you change that correct answer on your master version, okay, what that's going to do is that's going to have a ripple effect across your version 1, 2, and 3 of your exam. So now Turning Point is going to say, oh, geez, I need to go update this across all of these. So on version number 1, you can see here the correct answer for 4, because it was all shuffled around, actually becomes A. So if this version became on the master, if I said, oh, oops, this should actually be A right here, okay, what it's going to do is it's going to go through and update that on all of my versions throughout the rest of my question list. Okay, so it's very easy to make a correction. At the same time, if you delete a question from your master list, it's also going to delete it from any versions that it's included on. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, where's the ability to change answers? I'm assuming you mean to change what the correct answer is. For a self-paced test, all you have to do is type into the box here what the actual correct answer is. When it comes to the keypad, I'm going to show you guys in just a second how specifically that's going to work. Okay. Now, on this topic of building the question list for a self-paced test, like I said, you do not have to put the questions and answers in. If you choose to, you can build your entire exam within Turning Point. You can type all your questions or import all your questions along with all your answer choices, so it's a full, detailed exam. In that scenario, Turning Point does let you print copies of stuff. So just to give you an idea, if I had made an actual full-out exam here with my questions and answers, I can actually print a student copy of it. So it's going to tell the student what the name of the test is, and that this one that they have is version 1, and it's going to show all the questions and answers. So if you put the extra time in to create all your questions here, Turning Point will let you do a direct printout for the students. You can also print a teacher copy with all the correct answers indicated, and you can also print an answer key for reference. So you can, again, just like with Anywhere polling, you can be as detailed or as not detailed as you want. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit Save and Close. Yes, so student changing answers. Okay, I'm going to show you that in just a second. So let's look at how to run an actual self-paced test. So on my dashboard, I'm going to load my Turning Point 5 demo course. Just to give you an idea, it's just a list of celebrity names that I grabbed from the internet, and it's pre-populated with some device IDs, so I did this ahead of time. So I'm going to use my Turning Point 5 demo course participant list, so Turning Point knows who my people are. And I'm going to use my self-paced polling webinar list here, question list, and I'm going to go into self-paced polling. And so here is our initial screen. It gives you a little bit of information. It shows you who all your participants are, what their status is, so whether they are currently writing the exam, whether they're done, or whether they have not joined at all. It tells you the question list you've loaded, so if you grab the wrong one, you can close down and go back and get the correct one. It tells you how many questions are on the list, and it tells you how many versions are there. So our first step here is the top left corner here. There's a button that says Accept Logins. In self-paced polling, this is sort of always your action button. It updates automatically depending on what step you're in throughout the process. So our first step is to click it and set up how we want our participants to connect to this particular session. There's an option here for participant login. I have mine turned off because I'm using a participant list. If you have a class list with student IDs in it, for example, you can set this to required, and I always recommend to clear previous user ID on the card so that it makes sure that the right information is getting entered. By doing this, what it's going to do is it's going to prompt the students to say, please enter your student ID or your user ID. When they punch that student ID number in, it's going to look at your participant and say, oh, student ID 123456, that's Derek, so this is his keypad, and it automatically assigns that keypad to me on the list. So it makes it very easy. If you have a list like mine where you've got the device IDs already populated, I would recommend leaving the participant login turned off because your participant list is already going to be accurate. Your time limit here, you can leave it to none. If you leave it on none, it's a manual process of closing the exam. So it's up to you to say, okay, tester exam is done, we're finishing it. You can set a specific duration. So going back to, it's a 2-hour exam, we can set the exam to 2 hours. Okay, basically what's going to happen is when the 2-hour time limit's up, the self-paced test closes, Turning Point captures all the data from whatever point the students are at right now, and then they're scored based on what they've done. Okay, so if I only answer 50% of the questions and I only get half of them right, I'm only going to score 25% on the exam, right? You can also set a specific end time. So if your test starts at 1 o'clock and you say to the students you've got until 4:30 to complete this, as soon as your system clock hits 4:30 p.m., it's going to close the test for you again automatically. You also have an option for the completed test message. You can have it do nothing at all. You can also have their keypad show their point total, their percentage, or their point total and percentage combined. So, earlier I mentioned that everything's scored in real time. So when a student submits the test, their keypad can literally show them, you got 80%, you got 50%, you got 90% as soon as they're done the exam. Okay, so it's immediate scoring. So you can control exactly how everything is configured. Okay, now keep in mind, this self-paced polling screen that we're looking at, this is not intended for the students or the class to see. This is strictly for yourself as the teacher or the TA or the facilitator or whatever. This is just strictly for you to see. The students do not need to see this at all. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start polling. Now, let's see if this is going to work. Fingers crossed. I have a document camera set up here with some keypads, and hopefully everything works properly here. Hopefully it's not too laggy. So I have a QT device here, and I have our NXT. So let's go ahead here and connect to the test. Okay, so I'm just going to hit my enter button. You're going to see there that the screen say welcome. It's going to do a battery check to make sure I have enough battery power to get through the test. And then it's going to ask me what version I have. So let's say I do version 1 on this one and version 2 on this one. Okay, it's going to log me in. It's going to verify to the student, this is the test you're doing, this is the version you're doing. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. Let me just move my window out of the way here. You'll see here now that I've got 2 participants currently in progress. And now you'll see on my displays on my keypads here, there's little number bubbles at the top of the screen. That represents the question in the test that you're doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and start answering some questions. Okay, and you're going to see as I respond to them, it fills them in. Okay, when I'm ready to go on to the next question, I just use my arrow keys here, and I respond to the next question. Okay, as the student, you can skip a question if you want. So if I say, if I'm looking at my test and say, I don't really know the answer to question 3, I want to come back to it, you can skip it. You can also go back at any point and review what your answers were that you entered. So before you actually submit your final exam, you can go back and look at it and say, oh no, you know what? I want to change my answer for 2. I want to change it to D. Okay, and that becomes your answer selection. Okay, so it's very, very easy. Just going to go through and answer the rest of the questions here. Probably get a terrible grade, but let's see how it goes. Do it here on the NXT. Okay, you'll see there that I get a complete message. If I did not answer every single question, the keypad will tell me that I'm incomplete, and it will tell me to go back and finish the test. It'll show me the questions that I did not answer. Okay, so it's not going to let you submit a test that is not finished. So I'm going to send it. It's always going to do a double confirmation so that a student doesn't automatically or accidentally submit a test that isn't finished. So it's going to say, do you want to submit it? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. So there's always that 2-step confirmation when we're doing self-paced testing. Okay. You're going to see here on the screens, it's going to send the test to my computer. Okay. And then it's going to log the student out of the test. Okay. Here on my status window as the teacher, I can see these 2 participants are finished. Down here at the bottom, I can also see I have 2 logged in users and 2 completed tests. Okay, so I know I'm good to go. One of the really neat things here is the live results monitor. So you can actually open this up and as the instructor or facilitator see in real time how everybody's doing during the test. So if I actually had Ben Affleck and Angelina Jolie in my class, I could see exactly how they're doing right now as they're writing it. It's also going to show you how many versions or what version each student is writing. We've done a few different exams with a couple different universities now, and there's always the couple of students left in the class, reviewing their answers and making sure everything's exactly the way they want it. And so this window was really nice because we could actually see, okay, the last 3 or 4 students in the class, they've answered all the questions, they're just going back and reviewing the work, right? You can also use it as an indicator, right? You know, if Angelina here was sitting there, you can see she's only gotten 1 out of 5 questions correct so far. You know, if it's a huge class with 500 students, it's maybe not so realistic, but if it's a smaller class, you know, 30, 40 people, and you know specifically where Angelina's sitting and who she is, you can kind of identify and sort of go and say, you know, hey, like, you know, what's going on? Maybe it's a matter that she selected the wrong version number, right? Things like that. So it's very easy to kind of monitor the students' progress as they go if you want to. Once your exam is done, if you configured the test to end after a certain amount of time, it's going to close automatically. In my case, you see there's no timer or anything going here. I'm just going to manually click the stop polling button, okay? And that's going to end my self-paced test. My action button here now becomes a save disk. So just like we saw with Anywhere polling and PowerPoint polling, it's going to ask me to save it. Okay, you'll notice that it automatically uses the name of my question list, so it automatically names it for me, and I'm done. Okay, so this is now complete. You'll see that we're back to accept logins. Okay. As far as the testing process goes, one thing I will give you a heads up on, if a student submits their exam on their keypad, so if they finish their test, answer all the questions, submit it, say, yes, I definitely want to submit it, and then after that's done, say, oh, I want to go back and change an answer, they cannot do that. They will have to, if they want to change an answer, they will have to re-enter the self-paced test and re-answer all the questions. Okay, so keep that in mind, is that once a student submits it, they are committed to what they've entered. It's done. They cannot change anything without redoing the entire test. Okay, now when it comes to reporting, exact same thing that we've seen with Anywhere polling and PowerPoint polling. From our Manage tab here, I now have my self-paced polling webinar session automatically grouped to my TP5 demo course participant list because that's the one I used. So when I hit reports, okay, what's going to happen now, okay, is I can look at version number 1 and I can see, okay, let's see how Ben did. Okay, it's going to score and tell me that Ben got 60%. Okay, so just like in PowerPoint, you're able to see all this information right through your reporting within the back end of Turning Point. Okay, so that's kind of the idea on how self-paced polling is going to work. Again, just as a reminder, you do need to have a participant list created. You do need to have a question list created with at least how many questions are there and what the correct answer choices are, so Turning Point knows how to grade your course or your class. And then you also need to have your receiver plugged in and a QT device, response card, or an NXT. Okay, so those are the 2 models that you need. Just like with Anywhere polling, within self-paced polling, there is no simulated polling option. There's no way to test your test. So again, with self-paced polling, you would need to have a receiver plugged in and at least one NXT keypad in your hand in order to go through and sort of test your exam that you've built. Okay. So that's kind of the self-paced polling option. Again, self-paced polling is exactly the same on Mac and PC. There's no differences there. So everything we just looked at on my PC-based system is going to be exactly the same for any Mac users out there. Okay, so it's very easy. Okay, so in terms of today's webinar, that's going to wrap us up a few minutes early. So that's our Anywhere polling and self-paced polling. I know there were some questions as we went along. I will stick around on the line here to answer any other questions that might come in. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. If you've attended the new user and additional topics, thank you very much for participating in those 2 as well. This session was recorded. I will be posting it online and getting it processed and sent out to everybody. I'm going to try my best to get it done for the end of today. However, with processing times and stuff, it may not be doable. So you may not see it in your inbox until Tuesday, with Monday being the holiday. However, I will get that to you as soon as possible. And again, just as a reminder, if you have any questions after today, if you need a hand with anything, please feel free to give me a shout. So with that, we'll wrap up this webinar. I'll stick around for a little while to answer any questions that come in. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a fantastic long weekend. Great answers. How does this work? Or great question. Sorry. How does this work with short answer and essay questions on tests? So in your question list, I'll show you here. So what's going to happen is if I had something like this one here, where's our office located, and I change the type to short answer, I'm just going to key in what my acceptable correct answer is. And what's going to happen is when the student comes to this question, so when they're scrolling through all the question options on their device during the test, what's going to happen is the keypad will automatically detect the type of question they're answering. So it'll switch from like the multiple choice entry mode into short answer entry mode. So it'll flip over and allow them to type in words. So it'll do that all automatically. And then if you go from here to back to a multiple choice style question, again, it'll flip back to the multiple choice style input for the student. So as far as the student experience goes, it's very seamless. They're just going to scroll through the questions, and Turning Point and the keypad together kind of make sure that everything's working the way it should, and the proper input style is being used. The essay slide is, or the essay question is a little bit trickier. With the NXT and the QT device, just like in PowerPoint polling, you're limited to 160 characters of input. So with an essay style slide or an essay style question, it's really more of an open-ended, answer this question within 160 characters sort of thing. I don't know how that's going to work with ResponseWare, to be honest, when that update comes out. Currently with ResponseWare, if you ask an essay question in PowerPoint polling, you have an unlimited number of characters that you can enter. Like, you can literally enter an essay if you wanted to. So I can't say for sure if that same unlimited character input is going to come over to the self-paced polling or not. I'm guessing it will, but we won't know for sure until a little closer to launch day on that one. So the way it scores answers to your short answer questions is just like it does within PowerPoint polling. So when you set a short answer question type here, on the little settings panel here, you're going to tell it that there's a correct answer. And then you either in this box here, or you can do it in the line up here, type in what the acceptable keywords are, so what the correct answer is going to be. You can enforce capitalization as well if you choose to. And so that's how it's going to score and know whether the student is right or wrong on a short answer question or a numeric response style question. So that's the way it's going to kind of know the difference. One thing to keep in mind with a short answer style question is that because it's a computer, it's literally right or wrong, right? So if the student makes a typo in the answer they submit, they're going to be flagged incorrect. Same thing if you, as the person building the question list, types in and makes a typo, but the students all spell it correctly, it's going to flag them wrong as well. So you have to watch for that. The nice thing is if a student makes a typo, and you say, well, you're going through looking at the results and say, well, they had the right answer. They just, flipped the I and the E around. It's probably a typo because they were typing on the keypad. Not a big deal. You know what? I'm going to give them the correct answer anyway, right? So you can always go back and do that sort of thing. Same thing if you realize, oops, I made a typo myself in the correct answer, or, I set C as correct instead of A, and, everybody gets the question wrong. As long as you've saved that test data, you can always go back and make that change and in the data say, no, this is actually the correct answer, and Turning Point will update all the participants' scores or grades for that particular session. So as long as you've got the data saved, if there are any errors or mistakes or anything that were made, we can always help you go back and make any changes that need to be made. Oh, you're very welcome. That's great to hear. You've got some big plans for it. Like I said, when you're getting ready to set everything up, or as you're setting stuff up, if you run into any challenges or anything, drop me an email or give me a shout, and we can work together to get everything up and running for you. That's a great question, Tom, about ResponseWare with self-paced polling. I don't know the answer to that for sure. I will keep my ears open, and if I hear anything, I will note your information down, and I'll let you know. I'm going to guess it probably will, because that's the way it works with PowerPoint polling and Anywhere polling. So I'm going to guess that sort of behavior is going to transfer over to self-paced. However, I can't say 100% for sure because I haven't seen that information from our development team. But as soon as I hear anything or see anything, I'll make a note here to let you know. No problem. You're welcome. All right, we've got a few more minutes here before I jump off the webinar. So if there's any other questions, fire them my way, and I'll make sure I get them answered here before we go our separate ways. Okay, there's a question here. Can you combine ResponseWare and keypads in the same session? Yes, you can. So if you've got some participants participating remotely, or some students physically in class using a smartphone or a laptop or tablet or something, and some students using keypads, absolutely, yeah, you can use the two technologies together. You can also use different combinations of keypads. So if some students have ResponseWare, some students might have an NXT, and some students maybe just have like the standard LCD model because that's all they need for most of their classes. All of that could be used in the same session, keeping in mind that if you've got a student that has, say, an LCD model in the class, they're not going to be able to respond to a short answer or essay-style question, right? They're only going to be limited to multiple choice. So just, you have to keep that in mind. But other than that, yeah, all of our different keypad models will work together, and then you can throw ResponseWare into that mix, no problem at all as well. Yeah, Tom, I saw your email about that just before the webinar. I'll connect with you offline, and we'll get that sorted out together. No problem.